Let's dive into how economic factors like disposable income influence trends in the creative industries. Can you elaborate on this, Sarah?
Certainly, economic conditions significantly impact consumer spending. For example, during economic booms, people have more disposable income, leading to a surge in demand for high-end fashion and art. This was evident in the Roaring Twenties when prosperity led to extravagant styles.
But what happens during a recession? Isn't there a shift in consumer behavior that affects trends?
Absolutely, during downturns, cost consciousness prevails. The 2008 financial crisis saw a rise in DIY culture and upcycling, with consumers opting for sustainable and affordable options. Economically, this can lead to innovation in production methods to reduce costs.
And how do production costs play into this dynamic?
Production costs are crucial. If raw materials become expensive due to economic policies or tariffs, it can stifle creativity or push designers to seek alternative materials, which can, in turn, spark new trends. Looking forward, embracing new technologies might mitigate these challenges.
Moving on to environmental factors, how does sustainability impact creative industries, especially in terms of materials and processes?
Sustainability has become a key driver in design. The shift towards eco-friendly materials is reshaping fashion and product design. For instance, Stella McCartney's commitment to sustainable fashion has set a benchmark, yet finding eco-friendly materials at scale remains a challenge.
Some argue that sustainability limits creativity. What are your thoughts on this?
It's a valid concern. However, constraints often fuel creativity, compelling designers to innovate. The rise of biodegradable materials and digital fashion are exciting developments. Still, we need more investment in sustainable tech to broaden these opportunities.
How do you see the creative industries addressing these challenges in the future?
I foresee a future where collaborations between tech companies and designers lead to breakthroughs in sustainable materials. Imagine 3D printed garments from recycled plastics becoming the norm, revolutionizing both production and style.
Let's discuss social dynamics. How do factors like diversity and influencer culture impact trends?
Diversity and inclusion have broadened the spectrum of creative expression. Brands like Fenty Beauty have successfully tapped into diverse markets, offering products that cater to all skin tones. However, influencer culture can sometimes perpetuate unrealistic standards.
There seems to be a tension between authenticity and commercialism in influencer culture. How does this affect consumer choices?
Indeed, while influencers can drive trends, there's a growing backlash against lack of authenticity. Consumers are becoming more discerning, seeking genuine recommendations over paid partnerships. This shift is encouraging brands to foster transparency.
What potential changes do you foresee in this landscape?
As technology advances, I expect virtual influencers and augmented reality experiences to redefine engagement. This could lead to more personalized and interactive consumer experiences, blending the virtual with the real.
Finally, let's delve into cultural appropriation. What are the risks and impacts within the creative industries?
Cultural appropriation can lead to exploitation and misrepresentation, damaging both cultural heritage and brand reputation. For instance, Gucci faced backlash for not crediting the African culture that inspired their designs, resulting in calls for boycotts.
How do brands navigate these complex issues without stifling creativity? What steps can the industry take to address these challenges moving forward?
Education is key. By fostering awareness and understanding of cultural contexts, the industry can promote responsible creativity. Technology, such as blockchain, could also play a role in tracing the origins of designs, ensuring proper credit and compensation.
Ever wondered why some media grabs you instantly, while other content just falls flat? Today, we're dissecting those invisible rules, codes, and conventions that shape everything from movies to TikTok clips.
I'm excited for this one. We're breaking down what codes and conventions actually are and why they matter so much in storytelling. Plus, we'll talk about how creators use them and when they sometimes break those rules to stand out.
We'll start by laying out the basics, Then dive deep into how genres, narrative types, and media techniques play with these codes. We'll also unpack the pros and cons, where conventions help, and where they hold us back.
By the end, you'll be able to spot codes and conventions in any media and evaluate how they change depending on context. Let's get started.
Let's kick things off with the basics. When we say codes and conventions, what are we really talking about?
They're essentially the unwritten guidelines creators follow, like the expected structure of a news report, or the way music is used to signal emotion in a film. Codes are technical elements, while conventions are the typical ways those elements get combined.
So, codes might be things like editing style or camera angles, and conventions are the patterns, like a jump scare in horror or a happy ending in rom-coms.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how these are shaped by audience expectations. If a filmmaker breaks those conventions, the audience either gets surprised or totally confused.
That makes me think about storytelling itself. There's a big difference between scripted and unscripted content, right?
For sure. Scripted content follows a pre-written path, think dramas and sitcoms, while unscripted stuff, like reality TV or documentaries, responds to real events as they unfold. The conventions for each are worlds apart.
And then you have genres, which set up their own expectations. A horror film signals suspense, while a comedy aims for laughs. The tone is carefully chosen to fit the genre mold.
But sometimes creators mix it up, like adding humor to a thriller to subvert those conventions. It keeps audiences guessing and can make the story more memorable.
Something else that really shapes media is narrative structure. I'm always intrigued by linear versus non-linear storytelling, like Memento, flipping the timeline.
Non-linear stories challenge our brains. They don't follow a traditional beginning, middle, end sequence, so we have to piece together the puzzle. Plus, the point of view matters. First person puts us inside a character's head, while third person can show a broader world.
And with interactive narratives, like video games or AR experiences, the audience often chooses the path. That changes how conventions work, because the story can branch in different directions.
Editing becomes crucial there. Creative cuts and transitions help shape the experience and guide the audience, whether the story's traditional or interactive.
Let's dive into the technical side, those codes that turn a simple story into a real sensory experience. Sound, image, lighting, color, they all carry meaning beyond the script.
Diegetic sound, like dialogue and footsteps, anchors us in the story world. Non-diegetic elements like background music hint to us how we should feel. And atmospherics create mood, sometimes without us even noticing.
Images are equally powerful. Framing, shutter speed, and movement draw our attention to what matters. Lighting and color choices like warm tones for nostalgia or cool shades for suspense shape our emotional response.
And don't forget shape. Whether it's 2D animation or 3D VFX, the visual design sets the tone and can even hint at genre or narrative structure before a single word is spoken.
So, with all these codes and conventions in play, what are the actual upsides, and what gets tricky?
One big benefit is clarity. Audiences instantly recognize what they're watching, so they're primed for certain emotions or experiences. Conventions make content easier to produce, too.
But the downside is predictability. If creators stick too closely to conventions, stories can feel stale. Plus, in new contexts like VR or social media, old rules sometimes don't fit, and creators have to adapt.
That's where creative decision-making comes in. Choosing which codes to follow, break, or reinvent can make all the difference. It's a balancing act between meeting expectations and surprising your audience.
This all connects to how media creators decide which codes and conventions to use depending on what they're making and who it's for.
A good example, a news segment needs strict conventions for credibility, while a music video can play with color and editing for artistic flair. The context shapes the choices.
And when codes and conventions shift, it's often because audiences demand change. Think about how social media has blurred the lines between scripted and unscripted, linear and nonlinear.
Creators have to be flexible. They need to read their audience, understand the context, and make decisions that align with both the message and the medium.
Let's wrap up. First, recognizing codes and conventions helps you decode how media shapes your perceptions so you're not just a passive viewer.
Second, Understanding the benefits and challenges lets you see why creators make the choices they do. Sometimes rules are meant to be bent or broken.
Third, context is everything. Whether it's a film, a VR experience, or a TikTok, the best creators adapt their approach to fit the audience and platform.
If you want to level up, try analyzing your favorite media piece this week. Spot the codes and conventions, then ask yourself why those choices were made and how they affect your experience.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more on media secrets. Until then, keep your eyes and ears open.